Okay, let's dive in. We've got this really interesting stack of sources you shared, all looking pretty closely at where AI is today.
They really do. And I think today we can unpack what these materials are saying about the real limitations of the AI we use every day,
Right.
and then explore this vision they have for something, well, quite different. They call it evolutionary AI.
Yeah, that picture they paint of current AI, it's pretty stark, isn't it? Once it's trained, they use this striking metaphor.
They do. Rigid, like cement. That's the word they use. Once trained, it sets. It can't learn more, can't evolve further by itself.
Even summit, wow. That really hits home, that static nature they're pointing to. So it just reacts passively. Each input is separate.
Exactly. And critically, the sources emphasize it does this without really holding on to the context of, say, a longer conversation
Hmm.
or learning from that interaction itself.
Hmm.
Talking to it more doesn't automatically make that specific instance smarter.
Right, right. It's not learning from you in that moment. So, okay, our mission here, really guided by these sources, is well, first, let's break down these core problems they identify, the
Yeah.
limitations, and then let's dig into their proposed future, where AI isn't just, a static tool, but maybe,
hmm
potentially, a partner that keeps learning.
A continuously learning partner.
Yeah.
Let's see what the documents lay out.
Okay, agreed. And they're not vague about the problems, are they? Seems like they pinpoint three specific core flaws, things stopping current AI from being truly personalized or evolutionary.
That's right. Three distinct characteristics they see as the main hurdles right now.
Okay, so the first one they call out is error blind. What does that mean according to these materials?
Well, the sources explain that current AI, it relies really heavily on inductive reasoning. It learns by seeing patterns in the data it was trained on.
Okay.
But that training data, it's always finite, right, by definition.
Finite
Uh,
data. But reality, that's infinite, always changing.
Precisely. And these documents, they really highlight this gap. There's this potential mismatch between the AI's learned patterns, we call it database-based local generalization,
Yeah.
tied just to the training data,
Hmm.
and the messy, complex real world, which needs what they call reality-based generalization.
So the AI is working off its limited rule book, but the real world might be playing a different game.
Exactly. And here's the critical point the sources make.
Yeah.
The AI can't see the mismatch. It doesn't know because it's just applying its fixed patterns.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a built-in way to realize, hang on, this is outside my training or my pattern doesn't fit here.
Ah.
It just applies what it knows, even if it's totally wrong in that context. It can't spot its own errors.
That's a big one. It doesn't know what it doesn't know. Like that analogy they use, training a driver only on sunny straight roads.
Exactly.
And then they hit a winding mountain pass
Yeah.
in dense fog. They wouldn't even realize why they're failing because it's so far outside their experience.
It's precisely that kind of situation.
Huh.
They give an example, too, an AI trained on tons of cat pictures, normal settings. Then you show it a cat swimming.
Right, unusual context.
Totally outside its usual training distribution. A wet cat, it might misidentify it or make some weird judgment based on its fixed patterns.
And it wouldn't flag that as, this is weird, maybe I'm wrong.
Not by itself, no.
Yeah.
That's what the sources argue. It just applies the pattern. And even more, they say, if a person, a supervisor, does spot the error,
Yeah.
the AI can't internally reflect on that feedback or adjust what it does next based on it, not in that immediate cycle.
So hold on, even if you tell it, nope, that's wrong, the AI just keeps going with its original flawed model for that interaction.
That's the argument, yeah. It's stuck with its programming for that cycle, which means you constantly need that external check, a human, maybe another system, to catch the error and potentially step in. It can't just self-correct because an error happened or was pointed out.
Okay, error blind, can't see its own mistakes or reality mismatches. That leads us to the second limitation you said.
Yes, the second one they identify is solution deaf, and it builds right on the first one.
Solution deaf. Okay, so even if someone does catch the error and tells the AI,
Exactly that. Even if a higher intelligence could be a person, could be another. AI spots the problem and provides the correction. The sources state that current AI cannot self-correct or really respond to that feedback dynamically, not in the moment it gets it.
it hears the feedback, maybe logs it somewhere, but can't use it to change how it's operating right then and there.
That's their point. It's still just processing things passively, input by input, using those preset patterns it has, telling it, hey, that was wrong, doesn't let it immediately stop what it's doing internally, or sort of,
Mm.
quickly retrain itself on that feedback to get the next thing right.
So while it's actually running, it's kind of functionally blind to its own errors and deaf to any immediate solutions offered.
Functionally blind and deaf to dynamic correction. Yes,
Yes.
that's a good way to put it based on these sources.
Okay. Which brings us to number 3, the third limitation they focus on: passive retraining.
Right. So this deals with what happens after an error has been caught externally, and maybe you've gathered examples of the mistake.
Okay.
According to these documents, the AI cannot autonomously decide to retrain itself using those specific examples.
It can't learn from its mistakes even when they're basically handed to it on a platter.
Not on its own initiative, no. The sources seem pretty clear. It can't independently go, right, that was an error, I should add this to my knowledge, or, okay, need to adjust my internal model based on that failure.
So how does it ever improve then, if it makes mistakes?
Well, that's the passive part. The sources really stress that it needs external management.
Yeah.
That third party, again, the human supervisor,
Yep.
usually.
Ah.
They have to collect the error samples, often define new labels for them, figure out what went wrong, and then explicitly instruct the AI on how and when to incorporate this new information. It happens in a separate offline retraining cycle.
So the AI isn't sort of proactively scanning for its own weaknesses or seeking out ways to get better.
Not according to these materials. It's described as entirely reactive, needs that external direction, needs someone with the authority to say, okay, time to learn this, and manage the whole process, making sure the new data is good, labeled correctly, all of that. It sounds pretty manual.
Very human intensive, yeah.
Okay, let's pull those three together again. Error blind,
Hmm.
can't see its own mistakes. Solution deaf, can't use feedback in real time while operating. And passive retraining, can't learn from errors autonomously, needs explicit external instruction.
Yeah, that paints a very consistent picture based on these sources. Current AI, incredibly powerful, absolutely, but only inside the box of its training data.
Within those limits.
Exactly, but fundamentally static
Mhm.
and heavily reliant on constant external help, humans, other systems to handle anything unexpected, or even just to improve over time. That static nature, that rigidity. That's the core takeaway about the current state, according to these documents. And it feels like that whole structure of limitations is exactly what the sources use as a jumping off point. They pivot from there to their proposed solution, moving past these problems towards what they're calling evolutionary AI.
Evolutionary AI.
Yeah.
Right, so what's the core vision there? What are they actually proposing?
Well, the big idea seems to be AI that learns much more like, well, like we do, or like biological systems,
Okay.
able to self-evolve, learn from mistakes, not just after some big offline update, but maybe right away in the moment. And this seems crucial, evolve with you through ongoing interaction.
Ah, so it gets better because you're using it, interacting with it.
That's the core promise, yeah.
Okay, that definitely sounds like a major shift. So how does this next generation AI, as they call it, actually overcome those three limitations we just talked about? Error blind, solution deaf, passive retraining.
Well, they map it out pretty directly. They propose 3 corresponding capabilities to overcome those flaws. So first, instead of being error blind, it would have self-diagnosis.
Self-diagnosis. Okay,
Right.
so it can spot its own errors internally.
Yes, exactly. It could recognize when it might be making a mistake, maybe analyze the cause without needing an external flag first. And you mentioned earlier they actually touch on a technical principle for how this might work, this blind spot detection.
Ah, right, the multi-model approach that they described.
That's the one. They suggest maybe running multiple independent AI models on the same input at the same time.
Right.
If those models come up with different inconsistent answers, that's a big red flag. It suggests a potential blind spot, an area where the AI might be out of its depth or making an error.
Because it's unlikely that several different models would all make the exact same mistake on some tricky new input.
Right. That's the underlying logic, yeah.
Okay.
Using that redundancy as a check.
And the sources connect this to a broader design philosophy too, don't they? It wasn't just about spotting errors.
No, exactly. It's about doing it in a way that's actually useful for learning and safety. They talk about explainability. You should be able to understand why it flagged something. Transparency, making it clear what the potential problem is. And learning effectiveness, the goal isn't just for the system to stop, but ideally to figure out the correct answer, or at least understand why its first attempt might have been wrong in that specific blind spot it detected. They even mention that safety stop idea, like a temporary pause when it detects a potential issue.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So moving from error blind, needing external help, to self-diagnosis using internal checks.
Yeah.
Got it. What about the second one, solution deaf? How do they counter that?
That's where active learning comes in. The sources propose that this next-gen AI could actually take user feedback, things you explicitly tell it, or maybe even things it infers from how you interact,
Uh-huh.
and use that information immediately to improve its performance, right there, in real time.
So it learns directly from the live interaction itself, not just passively reacting anymore.
Precisely. Learning from the interaction. That seems key.
Okay, and the third one, overcoming passive retraining.
That capability is called autonomous adaptation. This is maybe the biggest leap. The idea is that the AI could actively respond to new things, new data, changes in the environment, totally novel inputs, and adapt its own internal models independently.
Independently, without needing that whole external human-managed retraining cycle with labeled data.
That's the vision laid out in these sources, yeah. It would learn and update itself based on its ongoing experience.
Wow. Okay, that really does sound like a fundamental shift in how AI operates.
It feels like it. Moving from that fixed tool, the one that needs constant poking and manual
Yeah, the
updates.
hammer that just stays a hammer, like you said. You need someone to guide it.
Right. Moving from that to what these sources are calling a more intelligent partner, something that actually learns alongside you, grows, collaborates more dynamically. That intelligent partner phrase keeps popping up.
It really seems central to their vision.
Okay, so the tech sounds potentially revolutionary, but why does this actually matter outside of the AI research community? The sources spend quite a bit of time on the real-world impact, the value proposition. Why should someone listening to this care if AI makes this jump from static to evolutionary?
Yeah, that's where the sources really connect it to tangible benefits. They highlight pretty significant market opportunities and real potential value. This isn't just theoretical tinkering.
Where do they see it making a difference first? Any specific fields?
They call out several medical applications, for one.
Okay, how would this evolutionary AI help in medicine?
Well, beyond just potentially improving diagnosis accuracy over time, imagine an AI system that could learn in real time from new patient data as it comes in, or maybe encounter and learn from a rare condition that wasn't really in its initial training set.
Without waiting for a big software update 6 months later.
Exactly, adapting on the fly to new medical knowledge or specific patient nuances. Then there's education. They talk about truly personalized AI tutors.
Personalized how?
Tutors that could dynamically adapt to your individual learning speed, pinpoint your specific challenges, and respond to your moments of understanding, adjusting the teaching style moment by moment, not just following a pre-programmed lesson plan.
That sounds way more interactive and potentially effective than what we have now.
It certainly does. Customer service is another big one they mention.
Makes sense.
Imagine conversational bots that actually get smarter, more helpful, more nuanced with every single customer interaction, learning from what worked and what didn't in each conversation.
A chatbot that actually learns from talking to people. That'd be different.
Right. And manufacturing, too. Real-time process optimization, and AI learning continuously, autonomously, from all of the sensor data on a factory floor, reacting instantly to unexpected glitches, maybe predicting machine failures before they happen, optimizing efficiency constantly.
Okay, so clearly big potential in specific sectors. What about the bigger economic picture? Did the sources touch on that?
Oh yeah, the economic impact is framed as substantial. I mean, the global AI market is already huge, right? Forecasts are putting it over $1 trillion by 2030.
Wow.
And these sources position this kind of autonomously learning AI as a key driver, a catalyst for a lot of that future growth.
How exactly? What are the economic levers?
Well, one major factor they point to is a significant drop in maintenance and operating costs.
Because you don't need all that manual retraining effort we talked about.
Exactly. That automatic autonomous adaptation drastically cuts the need for constant human supervision, data labeling, review cycles, explicit instructions. That's potentially a massive cost saving for companies deploying AI.
I can see that.
And beyond cost savings, they argue this new capability will actually create entirely new markets, new kinds of personalized, continuously improving AI services that just weren't possible before, driving innovation, boosting efficiency, the whole package.
Okay. And if you're looking at this from, say, an investment angle, or thinking about supporting this kind of research, what's the value proposition the sources lay out?
They frame it pretty clearly across a few dimensions. First, obviously gaining technology leadership, getting ahead in what they see as the next major wave of AI.
Right, being first.
Second, cost innovation, fundamentally changing how much it costs to run and improve AI systems. Third, opening up new, diversified revenue streams, from these novel, adaptive AI services.
Makes sense.
And they even touch on a potential positive social impact. The idea that creating AI that's inherently safer and more reliable because it can spot and fix its own errors could actually increase public trust in these powerful systems.
That's an interesting angle, too. So, pulling it all together from these documents, it's not just presented as a technical tweak, it's a vision for AI that's, well, more reliable because it self corrects, more useful and personalized because it adapts to you, and ultimately a more effective collaborator, a partner that grows with you. That partnership idea seems to be the thread tying it all together.
It really does feel like the central theme.
So, where does all this stand right now? According to the sources you looked at, is this evolutionary AI still just a concept on a whiteboard, or is it, further along?
Well, the materials suggest it's actually moved beyond just the concept stage. They indicate that the basic algorithm research and even some initial prototype development for this kind of evolutionary capability that's already complete.
Oh, okay. So it's past the purely theoretical drawing board phase based on what these sources say.
That's what they indicate, yes.
Yeah.
They seem to have the foundational pieces worked out. So the next critical step, according to these documents, is really about execution, focusing on building strategic partnerships and, crucially, securing the funding needed to push aggressively into actual product development and getting it to market, commercialization.
Right. Moving from prototype to product. Do they give any sense of timelines or goals? Are they ambitious?
Yeah, they lay out some pretty ambitious targets. According to the materials, they're aiming to have the first commercial product that actually integrates these evolutionary capabilities ready within 18 months.
18 months. Wow, that's fast in the world of deep tech development.
It is definitely aggressive. And they're not thinking small about market impact either. They're apparently targeting getting a 10% market share within just 3 years of that initial product launch.
Wow. Okay, so clearly they believe this is not just feasible but has massive potential and they're ready to move quickly.
That's certainly the impression these documents give.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive unpacking these sources. We kicked off with the picture they painted of current AI, you know, incredibly powerful in its domain, but fundamentally static once trained, fixed, like that cement metaphor.
Powerful but limited in its capacity for ongoing autonomous growth.
Exactly. And then we explored the vision these sources present for what could come next, an AI that can actually break out of that static mold, one that can learn, adapt, evolve on its own.
Yeah, that core idea from the materials, it really comes down to self-learning AI, this concept of AI becoming less of a tool and more of a partner that grows with people.
That phrase really captures it, doesn't it? Grows with people.
It seems to be the essence of their argument.
So maybe bringing this back to you, the listener, for a final thought. Think about all the AI you interact with every day. Your phone assistant, maybe recommendation engines on streaming sites, perhaps even diagnostic tools at work or those creative AI platforms. They're already woven into our lives, aren't they?
Definitely.
Now imagine how much more powerful, how much more useful, maybe even how much more trustworthy could those tools become if, as the sources propose is possible, they could genuinely learn from your specific interactions. If they could understand your feedback in real time, if they could catch and fix their own mistakes the moment they happen, and adapt to completely new situations or new information all by themselves without waiting for some big manual update from the developers, it really feels like it could change the entire game.
It really does. And it prompts some pretty deep questions, doesn't it? If AI can truly achieve this kind of autonomous learning, this dynamic evolution, adapting right alongside us, as these sources suggest might be on the horizon, well, what does that ultimately mean for how we even define intelligence? And maybe more practically, thinking about the near term. What kinds of incredibly complex, maybe previously unsolvable problems could we potentially tackle if we were working together collaboratively with an AI that truly learns and grows right alongside us? Something to really think about.